Good morning, everyone. My name is Keaton, and welcome to our workshop today. Today, we have a special guest joining us. So, allow me to introduce to everyone Dr. Ann Hafner-Granvik, who earned her BS in biochemistry and molecular biology from UC Davis and began her career in genetics, plant biotechnology, and medical diagnostics specializing in monoclonal antibody production. Her volunteer work teaching science to elementary school students sparked her passion for education and led her to pursue a PhD where we research protein targeting in yeast while also teaching under the guidance of experienced mentors at both UC Davis and Sacramento State University. After earning her PhD in molecular and cellular biology, she taught at UC Davis before joining Solano Community College, where she has taught microbiology, majors biology, the biology of sex, and the science study skills for 2 decades. Dr. HG also advises the SCC Pride Club and is committed to supporting diverse student communities. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. Ann Hefner-Gravink, and remember to put any questions that you may have in the chat, and we will answer them in the QA portion of the workshop. Dr. Gravnik, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm going to put some links in the chat as long as you promise me you won't immediately dive into opening them all and not pay attention to me. So um, let's see. I think. Here we go. Okay, where's my send button? Oh, that's enter. Oh, there we go. So there's a link to a Google Drive there. And so some of the planning worksheets and things that I'll be showing you will be in that Google Drive, along with a pretty good copy of the slides if you're one of those people that likes to have the slides with you later. And then it's also got links to some other websites that have, oh, that one didn't go, huh? Okay, let me put this one in again. To some other places where you can find good, if you're, really, you don't want to copy the link, okay. Copy the hyperlink, thank you. For somebody that likes planning on paper or worksheets and things, Oregon State Success Center has lots of those. So,
DHT, when you do this, just drop down to everyone so it gets to
oh,
everyone.
drop down to everyone. I see. Gotcha.
We could repost it, but I mean.
Okay. So there's that one. And then there's these two, hopefully will go. No, really? You don't want to, I don't know why. Usually I save it as a, okay. We're going to go as separate links then. That's them. I usually just save it in a note. I was trying to make it fancy and it didn't work. So there we go. So it's learningscientist.org website and the Google Drive with the files in it, and then the Oregon State website that has like more worksheets and advice than you can imagine. And be sure you check your own school that you're at to see what academic success resources they have, because a lot of times they're there and people have never been told about them or to go look for them. So that's always a good place to look. Right. There, and then all right. So as we said, I'm here to tell you, like, I'm not going to solve all your problems, but hopefully if you come away with 2 or 3 good tips that can help you as you take on STEM courses or preparing for MCATs or things like that, that would be my goal for you. If you have specific questions, feel free to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat too. And if you have specific questions, I have never studied for the MCAT. I only had to study for the GRE. But as an undergrad, I was a biochemistry major because I couldn't decide between biology and chemistry. So I thought biochemistry, that must be the perfect answer. But what I found out, it was also the major that all the premeds started out as, at least until the classes got too hard and then they all switched to psychology or something. But I still always had a lot of premeds along with me in my undergraduate journey. So this is me. I've taught both microbiology, and most of those people were headed for nursing school or other healthcare related careers because our undergraduate microbiology didn't work for med school. But now I teach Bio 2, majors biology. where we do fun things like making kimchi and kombucha in lab and hands-on activities to help cement what they're learning about. This is a cell signaling pathway. This is me and my family. We're empty nesters now with 2 kids off doing their thing. And I live in Fairfield, California, and teach at Salama Community College, like you said. First of all, I am not a big rah person, but I do want to remind you not to beat yourself up. Try to focus on your successes and what's working right, and then gently making changes for things that could do better. And the quote I thought was entertaining here said, "A positive attitude may not solve all your problems, but it will annoy enough people to be worth the effort." So rather than continually focusing on what's not going right, try to be a little more positive, and it can affect your ability to learn new things and try new things if you're a little more flexible with yourself. Okay, now if you've already made it through science, you already know it can be a pretty intimidating process. Don't take your scores personally, especially as you're getting to college. You're often getting to college with people that have all been straight A students all through high school, and you hit your first biology class, which I have taught at Davis, and you give somebody a C and they kind of freak out because they have never gotten a C before in their life. And I have to point out to them, this is a whole new combination of students, a whole new combination of classes, and you're usually going to have to scale up your study skills, because I'll admit it, I was just a crammer in high school. I think I was unusual in that I did actually study for some of the math tests, but not until 10 p.m. the night before, usually. And for high school, that worked for me great. And then I got to college, I was like, oh, this isn't working anymore. I can't get away with the last minute review cram session and still get A's. So remember that it's okay to need help in math and science. It's okay to need to study more or to take fewer science courses rather than trying to get through them as fast as you can. You may need to record lectures. You may need to go to office hours, and those are all things that are okay. Some people take pride in like, oh, I only studied an hour last night, or I stayed up studying all night, and they would brag about these things, but that's not anything to brag about. There's better ways to do it. Imposter syndrome. Hopefully you haven't experienced this, but probably you have. That feeling that, am I really supposed to be here? I don't know if I'm really supposed to be here. These people around me all seem smarter than I do. I'm not really feeling very comfortable or confident in this class or this course or whatever. And what I see is that it limits people from interacting with each other. They're afraid to raise their hand in class because they might say the wrong thing. They're afraid to study in a group with others because they're afraid they might not know something somebody else knows. If you can swallow your pride and just be like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I will raise my hand in class. I will say something completely wrong, and hopefully the instructor will kindly correct your mistake. Don't let that limit you from being afraid to speak out and afraid to interact with other people. It did me for a while, and I really regret that now. Don't forget, professors are literally paid to help you, okay? Unless they're part-time, sometimes part-timers don't get paid correctly for their office hours, but most professors should be paid for their office hours. And when they say, Wednesdays 3 to 4 and by appointment, that by appointment should be real. That should be a valid source of help for you to message them however they prefer, whatever system they prefer, and say, I need help. I can't come Wednesday 3 to 4 because I've got physics during that time. When else could we meet? And they should accommodate you. And if not, complain to their boss. Most schools have some sort of academic success or support center with in-person and online tutoring. And again, don't be too proud to seek that out if that's something you might need. Maybe you'll find out you don't need it or it's not helpful, but it's a free resource that you should take advantage of. And again, hopefully how it feels to be well prepared for a test and go in feeling pretty confident and pretty secure versus going into a test where you feel like, oh, I'm not really feeling so good about this one. I don't think I studied the right things, or I don't think I studied enough. So we're going to talk today about some planning and study techniques that really can help you ace your exams by being better prepared for them. We don't have the luxury in science of pulling the all-nighter and just cranking out the paper, right? Once that essay is done and you click submit, you can go to sleep. With the exams, you can stay up all night studying, and then you have to actually go take the exam and make your brain work even harder. So it's a different mindset when you have to be prepared for something and then, perform rather than just produce. We're into the semester already, but I would encourage you to go back and reread your syllabus for any of your courses. What items are worth the most points? Because you start off with the best intentions. I'm going to read all the chapters. I'm going to do all the homework. I'm going to do all the practice problems. And then real life hits and all your classes start having exams at the same time. And you've got to start prioritizing. And you may not be able to do everything. Hopefully you can. But again, work on what is worth the most points or most heavily weighted. Are there assignments that absolutely have to be submitted or you'll be dropped? Where can you find information if you miss class? Okay, are things recorded or somewhere where you can find them if you have occasion where you can't make it to class? Where can you find help? Okay, you could all get handed or asked to read syllabi the first week, and if you've got 3, 4, 5 classes, you sort of skim them and go, yeah. But I would encourage you to go back now and just look for these highlighted things, make sure you know what's going on. I've had students that figured out the last week of class. Oh, if I had done the homework, I would have an A instead of a B. And then they had the gall to message me and say, Dr. HG, could you open up all the homework assignments again? Because if I go back and do them, I would have an A in your class. And I said to them, no. And, if you'd done all the homework, you probably would already have an A in the class because you would have done the homework. So just being aware of where things are. Reading assignments. I know that students don't read as much as they used to. Make sure it's valuable for your course, because sometimes we are just supposed to assign a textbook so that we can use the slides and the materials that go with it. But you may not find the reading assignments that valuable. I would absolutely ask your instructors, should I read the entire chapter? Can you tell me which sections are relevant? Should I do the problems at the back of the book? Is that useful or not? Because for me, it's not. I don't use the problems from the textbook exam bank, but some instructors do. So that relevance is going to be important. You've probably been lectured at some point, maybe as early as elementary school, on reading strategies, right? SQ3R, and filled out little sheets and charts on how to read. There's all these methods out there, and the things they have in common is to preview what you're going to read, to find some way to engage with what you're reading. Have questions you're trying to answer so you don't just zone out and spend a half an hour reading and not remember what you read. Stopping to check your comprehension, and then summarizing what you read. Okay. The other thing that I'm going to suggest to you, here's first, this is in case you need to leave early. This is an important point. A lot of students find a lot of comfort in rereading their notes or rereading the textbook. And it feels very comforting because it's familiar and you see your highlights and you see your notes and you're like, this all seems really good. That has no correlation to whether it's actually in your brain or not. It just means you recognize it, right? It's an easy way to study, but it doesn't really help you with retention. So there's more efficient tools that we'll talk about to see whether something is actually in your brain. Rereading is not an effective way to do things. So taking notes, from experience how much content is in a science course. Like, you just memorizing the terms, people will be like, but I memorized the vocabulary. I'm like, good, that's step one. Now let's go to the concepts. Now let's go to integrating the concepts across chapters. So there's a lot of material coming at you. I would encourage you to take notes on everything rather than just sort of watching as things go by. They don't have to be beautiful notes. They don't have to be perfect notes. But for me, I have ADHD, okay? And I've discovered this later in life, although I always sort of knew I was kind of not good at sitting still. If I start to read and there's anything else I can be doing, I will probably wander off and do it. Okay, I'll see something and be like, oh, look at that. Oh, So if I sit down with something that I need to read and I need to absorb the content, I take a notebook next to me, and either by hand or on an iPad, I take notes on what I read. Okay? Between trying to read the book and trying to take the notes, there's not much else you can do. Like, you can't snack, you can't, do too many things. It really helps keep me focused. Okay? And sometimes the points isn't even the notes I produce, but the process of keeping me focused on what I'm reading. Okay. And the more you read, and the more you read higher tech content, meaning textbooks, medical journals, papers, the better you'll get at reading, and the easier it will be and the faster you'll get. Okay. How many times have you sat in class and watched a video and just gone, oh yeah, that was really interesting? Okay. If somebody's showing you a video, I hope, we're past the days where you just show notes to kill time in high school, right? And my day was even film strips once back in the day. But if somebody's showing you a video, it's probably for a reason. There's probably information in that video that they think you should know. And so it doesn't have to be detailed notes, but just writing down, oh, Dr. HG showed us that video in class about organs and their blood types. Make a note. And maybe later you'll be like, oh, didn't that video say something about the B cells and you'll know what you watched and where it was and how to find that information. If nothing else, write down the title, write down when they showed it, and write down one thing about it. And you've got a recording of something that was shown in class. Take notes in lab. I see people in lab all the time and they've got the lab instructions and they have the protocol, but they don't write down what they actually did. I'll come back and say, oh, your gel looks great. What's in lane 3? And they'll all look at each other like, I don't know. Did you write it down? Did I write it down? Who wrote it down? Somebody should have written it down. I'm like, you all should have written it down. You should know what you did. Okay. I've had people come up to me before a lab exam and show me like 10 pictures on their phone. Do you know what these are? I took these pictures in lab, but I don't know what they are. I'm like, okay. So when you're done at the end of lab, label your photos, go into your text editor or make notes somewhere that the things you're doing in lab, the things you're collecting in lab, that you have a record of what you did. Don't assume it's going to match the protocol. Maybe I told everybody, hey, our buffer B today is actually TBE instead of TAE because we ran out of TAE, and you all are going to tell me on the lab quiz that you use TAE buffer because it's what the protocol said, and you're all going to be wrong. So it's just keeping little records of things. All right, using your time wisely. Now, I feel a little hypocritical telling you this because I did finish these slides about 10 o'clock last night. But 10 years ago, that would have been midnight. And 10 years before that, it would have been 1 or 2 a.m. And when I was your age, it might have been 9 a.m. this morning. So I'm getting better as I get older and leaving more time for things. But I still do procrastinate just like almost everybody does. The problem is, like I said, in high school, this was good enough. This got me the grades and scores I needed. Procrastinating, studying at the last minute was fine. Love that charge, love that adrenaline, staying up late. I'm a night person. It works well for me. But what that means as you're building your knowledge in science and biology and medicine, we're assuming you know things from previous courses. We're assuming you know things from the first exam in order to build on them for the next exam. And if you've crammed enough to keep everything in your brain, dumped it all out on the exam page, and then walked away going, oh, I don't need to know that anymore. Okay. Now, if you're one of the poor computer science majors stuck in my class, that might be true. I always have a handful that I sort of feel sorry for. But if you're continuing on in biology, it doesn't really help you to do the charge and dump method because you're not taking things with you to make learning something the next time easier. Then if you go to the next thing you need to learn, you're basically relearning the building material and adding on to it. So how can we procrastinate less? What makes you procrastinate? What keeps you from working on things you want to do? Okay. Choosing a location where you can focus, minimizing distractions or interruptions. Again, I teach at the community college, so I have a lot of older students, and one of them was a mother of 3 daughters. And she would be trying to study for a class, and she says they would come tell her, Mom, I'm out of mascara. We need to go to Target right now to get mascara. And I'd be like, please don't tell me you get up from studying to drive her to Target for mascara. Tell her I run errands on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll be glad to grab you some when I go. But things trying to resist that impulse to do things that are urgent but not important. Study timers. Have you heard of Pomodoros? Using the Pomodoro method? So it helps me a lot to know that I've got a break coming up. And so, yep, my text message went off and somebody texted me, but I know I have a break coming in 10 minutes. I can wait 10 minutes usually to try and answer that text message. Okay. And then plan what you're going to do. What are you trying to accomplish during this study session? Okay. So Pomodoro timer, 25-minute sessions, 5-minute breaks. The exact length of time is not important. If you're working well and it hits 25 minutes, you don't have to take a 5-minute break. But sometimes just knowing that break is coming lets you relax a little. Time everything from a kitchen timer to the timer on your phone to fancy apps that will let you grow a little tree. If you stay off your phone, are all good. One of the mistakes I see when people say they need to study is like, well, I can't study until Sunday because I have class and then I have work and then I have this. And I'm like, you don't have 15 minutes or half an hour anywhere in that whole day? It doesn't have to be a 3-hour uninterrupted block to be a study time. Okay. Let's say you go to campus a little early, you have 15 minutes before class starts. Look over the slides, look over the book, look over something that you're going to talk about in class and prime your brain for that material. Okay. Then after class, maybe you go work out, but then maybe you also review the new vocab words that came up in class that day. Doesn't have to be 3 hours, it can be 20 minutes. Okay. Study and leave yourself breaks like showering, walking, physical exercise. Let your brain retool and make connections while you get clean or exercise or something. And so if you space your studying out through the week, you can do little bits and little chunks. And then when you do have more time, you can do longer sessions, but don't feel like you always have to have 2 hours free before you study, right? If you have a flashcard app on your phone, right? You can be waiting for class to start reviewing your flashcards on your phone. Heck, you can be in line to buy lunch doing flashcard apps on your phone. Somebody else is driving, you can be in the drive-through. So take advantage of little bits of time to just keep touching base, touching base, touching base. There will always be things. I'll go through a section, I'll be like, oh, I've got it all except for seminal vesicle and seminiferous tubules. Why do I keep getting those turned around? They're different things, but I still get those two terms confused. So, okay, let's spend 5 minutes just finding out a way that I can keep those two terms straight and spell them correctly or whatever. Okay. I mean, before class, after class is ideal, but not always possible. Choose whatever times work and you're most awake and efficient. Those dead time zones, like waiting for class to start or waiting for your next class. If you're a caregiver, okay, if you're taking care of kids or elderly parents or siblings, leave yourself extra time because you know something will always happen right before something is due, right? The day before the exam, somebody will get sick or somebody will need this and you'll end up, going somewhere to do something that you weren't planning on doing. I always had a carpool buddy in graduate school, and we commuted from Fairfield to Davis together, and she had 3 kids and a husband that was deployed in the military. And so anytime I felt like I was busy or too busy to get something done, I'd just do a little reality check and go, yep, how many kids did you take and pick up from school today? No, none. Okay. How many sick kids do you have at home? Oh, none. Okay. Get your act together. And, there's things that you could do. What else was I going to say? There's something I was going to say. I don't know what it was. Okay. I'll come back to it if I think of it. Okay. The forgetting curve. So the graph of rate of retention of the material versus how long it's been since you've heard it. Okay. And there's different versions of the curve and different exact numbers, but the overall theme is the same. By about 24 hours after you've heard something, you've forgotten most of it. Well, you've retained a third of it and forgotten 2/3 of it, unless you go back in and you touch base here. Okay. So anytime you can keep revisiting the material, you're going to keep increasing what you remember. So here, if you learn something, okay, and then instead of going down, you go back and study or review, oh, it goes back up again. Then you start to forget, oh, study or review, okay? And so that is where we get this idea of spaced repetition, which you've probably heard about. The flashcard apps will sometimes implement it. I myself had this happen sort of accidentally. I was taking human physiology. It was 4 days a week. And it was my last class of the day. And unfortunately, I had an instructor who wasn't very easy to understand. Okay. And this was back in the day before we had computers and things. So I went to the library. They didn't assign a textbook either. I had to go to the library and find an old version of a textbook that looked pretty close. And then I would take my class notes and this textbook and I would figure out what the person actually said. I'm like, oh, that's what that word was, or that's what that pathway was, or that's what that process was. And I rewrote my notes using the textbook and my class notes to be, a legible, understandable version of what went on in class. And I did that almost every day, Monday through Thursday after class. Now, did it take a lot of time? Yes. Was it one of the few relatively easy A's I got in college? Yes. I mean, that was a hard class. It was 4 units. It was a lot of material. But because I put in that every day, and it was probably an hour after class to rewrite all my notes, 4 days a week, I didn't have that big hump of material to try and cram in before every exam. I was keeping up with it and I didn't forget as much. Now, you can't always do that. And I understand people work, people have other classes, people have huge course loads, and that doesn't always work for you. But anytime, even if this is 10 minutes, checking in, not just putting everything under the bed. I taught, for the first 5 years, I taught microbiology Friday night, 6 to 9 p.m. and Saturday morning, 9 to 12. Once a week. It was designed for working students. It was great for them. But like they didn't really start studying until, I mean, maybe some started on Wednesday, but most just started on Thursday, studied for class on Friday and Saturday, and put the books back under the bed and started their work week all over again. So, you know, it's a hard thing to do. It does require that you plan ahead. Some flashcard apps will have this built in. So if they're asking you for an exam date or a quiz date, what they want to know is how often should I remind you to study these flashcards? How close are we getting to the exam? How can we space it out? So look at your syllabi, try to plan accordingly, and plan for those shorter study sessions rather than long cramming ones. Okay. So if you sit down to study, do you have a checklist? Something that you know you want to do, things that you need to get done? Okay. It's a good idea because you can easily get distracted. All of a sudden you open something else and something else you see and off you go. It's a good idea to have study objectives. What am I hoping to get done? Okay, this is my Sunday 3 to 5 session. What are my immediate goals? Is there a quiz, exam, or a due date that I'm working towards? What are the things I have to get done? Homework and things that might be, due that night. But what are the other things I can do to work towards this quiz or this exam coming up? Okay, and these two forms are both in that Google Drive, and there's more out there on the internet. There's if you use a digital note-taking systems, there's templates for them. But the main idea is just take 5 minutes or less and make sure you're staying on track. What do I need to study? What should I be studying? Because I'll very quickly go, oh, look at this Post-it. Oh yeah, I was supposed to do this, and off I go doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing because I'm not sticking to my list. So it's a good idea to plan what you need to study, and hopefully the next slide. Oh, and eat your frogs first. Have you heard this before? It's disgusting, but the whole idea is put your most unpleasant, your most dreaded task, the one that you're most likely to put off, put it at the top of your list, right? And I do this in real life too. I'll be like, oh my God, that room is a disaster. Okay, 15 minutes. I can do 15 minutes. And I just set a timer for 15 minutes and tell myself, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to do it first, get it out of the way. And even if it's only 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes more than I did before, right? 15 minutes is more than 0. So it's very hard for me because my inclination would be to empty the whole room, reorganize it completely, and spend 3 days doing it, but just 15 minutes, a little bit of time. So put your most dreaded tasks at the top. For me, sorry, Jubin, that would be writing letters of recommendation. I just find it very hard and challenging to do. So I try to knock them out before I dig into grading discussions. Oh, I dread doing those, so I try to do those first and not let myself get too far into anything else. So break your material into small sections. Don't just say, I need to study OChem. Okay. Say, I need to make flashcards for Module 5. Okay. I need to read and take notes on 2 sections of the book. Okay. Rather than saying, I need to read chapters 7 through 10, give yourself a reasonable goal and a reasonable amount of time so that you can check something off your list. Okay. And so you're going to finish those smaller chunks. And you might also be like, oh, I didn't get to section 7.2. But I got half an hour after dinner before I have to do blah, blah, blah. I'll finish 7.2 then. These small chunks let you fit them into those smaller bits of time. Okay, hopefully you've heard of the study cycle. Preview, attend, review, study, assess. If you haven't, there's YouTube videos galore on it. The idea is to spend a little bit of time before you encounter the material in a lecture situation. Even if you just survey through the book, looking at the headings, figures, and tables. Ideally, you'll have done the reading and taken notes on it, but again, that's something that sometimes time pushes out of the ability to get it done. Create some questions, even if they're crazy ones, just to keep yourself engaged. What do you think they're going to cover? What are some questions about the material? And this is one of the things that I really appreciated about Jubin is he always came to class with questions. How does this affect this other thing I've heard about? And it didn't matter whether it was really relevant or not, but it got us talking about it, kept them engaged in what we were learning. So anytime you can sort of find a way to engage with the material rather than just letting it go in, right? If you think about all the videos and TikToks and Reels that you watch, you know, in a day, you remember the ones that were either funny or reminded you of somebody or something that you know or you've done. Think about approaching your lecture material the same way, although sometimes, you know, OCHEM might be a little tough in that sense, but try to think about, could this possibly apply to, you know, something that I read about here, or something that I heard about here, or even crazy things. Someone on the internet said blah, blah, blah. And, you know, think about trying to make it interesting to you. Again, after lecture, review the vocabulary, summarize as best you can. And if you make a summary, again, of those lectures, then it'll be easier to review them later and find the chunks that you need to review. Okay. Again, from that Oregon State site, and probably also in that Google Drive folder, is this moving from passive to active studying. So initially learning the material, you attend the class and take notes. But when you're getting to the point of reviewing and testing yourself on it, what are some things you can try? And there's a whole list of suggestions here that really move you from just looking at things to testing yourself on them. And we'll see that that's going to be the key to determining whether you know something or not. So illusions of competence. This is a fancy name for the, ooh, I thought I knew that. But the quiz or exam says I don't. I was not able to recall it on the quiz or exam. So again, when you have things open in front of you, they look familiar. They feel familiar. You feel like you know it. Okay. But then on the quiz or the exam, you can't remember it. You can't recall it. You can't get it back. So the only way to see if it's in your brain is to try and recall it without any supports. Okay. So testing your ability to recall the material. If you spend even less time than reading and rereading the material, testing yourself, it is more effective. It is just a more effective technique. Okay. If you can state the answer without peeking at the notes, answer key, back of the flashcard, then you know it. Okay. And ideally, you would use those spaced repetition techniques to space out your testing of yourself on the material. One of my micro students was a parent of a young child, and he was in some soccer league where they drove all over every Saturday. They drove there, and they drove for hours, and they drove here. And well, he wasn't that young. He was 13. And so she made a study guide and flashcards, and she handed them to the kid in the back seat and said, okay, quiz me on this. And here's this 13-year-old, okay, mom, tell me the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And I'm like, well, you know, you should have registered him at the community college because he probably could have passed the course too by the end of the semester. But she did great. There was no way she could peek at the answers. Okay, she had immediate feedback. So how can you do more active studying? How can you interact more with your material? One is, if you're a picture person, use pictures whenever you can. Add figures or drawings to your flashcards. Draw things to represent material. Draw figures, label figures. Here's just a little cartoon somebody made to help you remember that gram-positive cells are purple and gram-negative ones are pink. Okay. Metaphors and analogies. If you like stories and you like telling stories, make your own story. Okay. What would it look like to be the electron cruising around in those orbitals? Would you go up or down? What would make you do that? Okay. Now, these don't all have to be things you try, but if something jumps out at you is like, oh, I'd like to try that, then by all means, try it. Plan your study session and also put in there, create an analogy for protein synthesis, right? Just try it. See if it helps you remember things. I had someone in micro when we were doing the immune system, keeping track of the B cells and the T cells and all those things. And she had some analogy using an ice cream truck, and she tried to explain it to me. And halfway through, I'm like, I didn't follow your ice cream truck, but you obviously aced the exam. Your ice cream truck analogy works for you, and that's the only person it needs to work for. Okay, it doesn't need to be anything that works for anybody else. One of the other links I gave you was to the learningscientists.org. And so these are people that actually work as psychologists and document what techniques have been shown to work. And I'm not going to tell you about all of them. They have 6 strategies altogether. Spaced practice, we already talked about as now I've lost the word for it. Where'd it go? Spaced repetition. So they call it spaced practice. We called it spaced repetition, but same idea. And there's more examples there that might help you. Dual coding one is one that I think is really useful for science because we give you lots of pictures, lots of graphs, lots of figures, lots of diagrams of a process or a system, and learning to analyze that figure and describe it in words and make those connections can really help you move that into your long-term memory rather than just keeping it in your short-term memory. Okay. So convert images to words. Look for visuals in your class materials. Either write out or verbally describe the figure or graph in your own words. Now, this would be a great thing to do with a study group or a study buddy. Practice explaining the figures to each other. Because I'm telling you, once you have to look at something and explain it to something else, like my job, you start to doubt yourself. You start to feel like, well, wait, I thought that was this. I better double. It really helps you find the holes in your knowledge when you have to explain something to someone else. And then 2, take the text and make your own visual aids. You probably had instructors ask you to make a concept map or to make a table or to make a chart, but design your own ones that appeal to you. And oftentimes it's going to be the process of making that visual aid that really helps you sort through the material, figure out what's important, figure out what's not, figure out which things go together. And so it isn't even about making the perfectly beautiful visual aid, but the process of creating it. It really helps you dive into the material and figure out what's what. Okay, retrieval practice. Like we said, we want to be able to make sure you know the material without any props, without any supports. How can you practice getting things into your brain and staying there? Flashcards, I assume you've heard of and you've had other speakers talk on them, so I won't dwell too much on that. Retrieval practice can take many forms. The most hardcore one, you get out a blank piece of paper and then try to write down everything you remember about that concept, that section, that topic. Whew, that can be a lot to do. It can be really hard and it can be really scary. So if you're going to do that, keep the content small. Okay, don't say, I'm going to write out the entire citric acid cycle from scratch on a blank piece of paper, at least until you're ready. Okay. But also practice quizzes, practice tests, making up questions and trading with someone. Write 5 questions on the chapter and trade with somebody else who writes 5 different questions. Okay. As we look at this learning period, this is the average retention rate, and this is the activity that it goes with. You'll see that reading 10%, audiovisual, demonstration, discussion here is increasing. Okay. Practice doing. Now that's hard because we can't always practice doing something we're learning. It's not always something that has an applicable skill or, lab event with it. But teaching others is the big one. So if you get any opportunities to teach other people, now this can be as simple as having someone else you study with and explaining things to each other. If you're an upper division student and you've done well in some of the lower division classes, sign up to be a TA, okay? Help out in one of these lower classes, and man, you will know that stuff inside and out and backwards by the time you have taught it to other people. Okay, group work. Again, I know coming out of COVID, people are still a little hesitant about study groups. And I know that a lot of the bigger universities, Davis did this too, they grade on a curve, and only the top so many people get an A and the next people get Bs. And so people didn't want to study with each other. I don't want to give you any of my smarts because you might take my A, right? You encountered that? Hopefully not, but it's pretty common, right? I would say, and of course, I don't grade that way. If you get an A, you get an A in my class. I'm thrilled that you got an A. But the competition is real. It is absolutely out there. But I still think that lifting each other up and working together is so much better for your mental health. Acknowledging to somebody else, I have no idea what that polyribosomal stuff he was talking about is. Does anybody understand what polyribosomes are, and can you explain it to me? And then somebody else might have a question on, well, I didn't get what was anaerobic respiration. That sounds counterintuitive. How can that be a thing? Can you tell me about that? And just by working together, it can make everything more pleasant, right? It can catch anything you don't know because you get ready to explain anaerobic respiration to somebody and you're like, well, wait, I Googled it and it said something about fermentation, but that wasn't the right same thing, was it? I don't think it is. And then you double check to make sure you've got your facts straight. Or if you're mixing up terms, somebody's using hypertonic and hypotonic in reverse. And so hopefully somebody else in the group will catch you before you miss that on the exam, because that's dumb, easy points just because you're mixing up terms. And so many terms sound so similar. I mean, mitosis and meiosis, who thought of these things? It's crazy, but you know. And you might find somebody that knows a good summer internship, right? You need breaks when you study. Your brain needs time to make connections and to do some thinking in the background. Okay. How many times have you been talking to someone and you can't remember their name? And so you're just doing that fake thing where you pretend like you remember their name, and then you're driving away in your car 15 minutes later and you're like, oh, that was Matthew. Why didn't I remember Matthew's name? That's because your brain was thinking about it that whole time and was finding that name for you. So take breaks that do not engage your brain, do not demand a lot of your brain from when studying, and it will start making connections in the background. And it'll start thinking of, oh, okay, hypertonic and hypotonic. We got to remember those. And you don't even know it's doing it. But you can't just always be cramming information in, or your brain is going to protest. Okay? Good ways to do this are not video games, I'm sorry to say. Is usually not texting your friends, I'm sorry to say. Working out is great. Walking, dancing, driving, doodle, draw, craft, paint, take a shower or bath, listen to music. Play a song that you know on a musical instrument. Don't take on a new one, but just play something you know and let your brain sort of wander. Things that let your brain wander. Meditate, pray, or even better, sleep. Okay. So in summary, taking notes, it's not just for lectures. Planning will save you time. Plan your week, plan your study sessions. Test out these active study methods. Go, research some of the ones that you think sound appealing. And if you can make it work, even if it's virtually, even if you're just on Discord together or something, study with other people. Take turns quizzing and teaching and supporting each other. All right. Questions?
I have a question for someone who is just starting out or whatnot. Like, what can you give one piece of advice for someone who's just starting out and wants to get better? What do you think is like the first step they should take in terms of studying and being a better studier for this
Being a
next?
better studier? I would say set up a place that's going to work for you. Okay. Sitting on your bed, TV going in the background, is probably not the best place to be. If you have a place that means study and you can limit the times you're interrupted and limit the distractions, it's going to make that time more efficient. Okay. And your back won't hurt as much as if you're all sprawled on your bed either. And then just use it, right? Get out your study planning sheet and say, what do I need to study? Let's make a study plan. For me, it had to be the library with one of those big things all around me and headphones on, and nobody bugged me. And luckily it was before cell phones the first time, so nobody was going to call me. Yeah.
That was me, but late at night, I would do that in my bed. I will say I was a bed studier, but luckily I didn't have any distractions really.
Oh, good.
But yeah.
Oftentimes I get the feeling people are like, some of my classes are flipped where they watch their lectures at home before they come to class. And I get the feeling I'm just talking in a tab, man. I'm just over there, blah, blah, blah. And when they see a question pop up, they stop and answer it, and then they go on to something else. And I'm like, if you were sitting, even just sitting, watching me taking a few notes, it would work so much better to have your full attention on something.
All right. So someone was asking if they
Okay.
can repost the
Yep,
Google
yep,
Drive link.
absolutely. I know, I hate that Zoom doesn't keep the chat if you come in late. Very obnoxious. Okay, that's, yeah, so the most recent link is the Google Drive folder with the, what would your study tips be when all the class material is found in a textbook? And the video is being recorded and will be available when the class material is all in a textbook. I know, I've heard of that. It sounds so dry and dreary. I just can't imagine being handed a book and being told, here, learn all this. So again, that's where obviously those reading strategies are going to come into play. Surveying the chapter, making sure you have an idea of what's coming. And when you look at that chapter, what do you wonder? What do you wonder? You know, I remember learning mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. This chapter hopefully is going to tell me why, because I never really understood why they called it the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah, it doesn't have to be deep questions, doesn't have to be, oh, I read about research on the mitochondria. It just has to be something that will make you curious to go hunt for. If you were provided any sort of study questions or vocabulary terms, even if they're just the back of the book questions, pull those out and have them separate from the reading and sitting next to you. Because then you read through those questions and you're like, oh, it's asking me how many ATP are produced in cellular respiration. I'm now looking for that fact as I read. Okay, I'm not just reading and falling asleep. I'm on the hunt for information, and I'm trying to answer these questions, and that is my goal with this reading, is to find the material I need and to answer the questions. So approach it more like a hunt rather than just a slog, hopefully.
I would just add that if you want to steal the professor's thunder, is look at the book before you show up to class and just look at the bold stuff,
Absolutely.
pictures, charts, slides, and those types of things, charts and those things that are under there. I mean, that's like the bare minimum you should do with a textbook. Just because, I mean, this is not to sound, but the professor doesn't pull the stuff, certainly a STEM class, out of thin air. Like they get it, from somewhere, and textbooks are pretty good at putting things into like some sort of outline and order. And then afterwards, if professor puts up slides, and I think like 99% of teach professors now put on the slides, PowerPoint slides, and then you come back and open your textbook and your PowerPoint, and basically whatever they put in that PowerPoint, it's going to be important. And
Mm-hmm.
you look through it through the textbook and try to make those connections, or even write a couple of notes, on there. But the textbook is a reference, hopefully. And if you have a professor that doesn't lecture that well, then you have to use that textbook as kind of like your guide. Because
Even more.
yeah. And so I personally love textbooks. The other part of it too is that I just don't like them with a lot of pictures and those things, but that's all of them now. So like unless you could
Right.
find like an old one.
See, and I'm a picture person, so more pictures for me, less text for me. But
I mean, I do like pictures because I can make connections, but to me, I get distracted when there's like too much
mm-hmm.
stimulation in a textbook
Yeah,
for me.
absolutely.
Yeah, and so and I would say like when you get to, the some professors are terrible. Like I had a friend who went to Berkeley and he had like a 3.99 GPA, and he's like, I took this class by this person who won the Nobel Prize, and I was really excited. And he was like, and that person was a horrible, horrible lecturer. It it was just like, it's like taking your nails and scratching it on chalk, and that's how it felt like in class.
So,
And you just had to go read the book.
yeah, what I will tell you now and I didn't know this as a student, but at the UC level and above, professors are paid to get grants and to do research. And if you are an excellent teacher, you are not the norm. And I was lucky enough to do grad school with an excellent teaching professor who never got recognized for it, never got any respect for it. All they wanted to know was, oh, you've got another grant, good. Oh, you've got this many grad students, good. So as an undergrad, sometimes you really have to do a lot of self-advocating and self-teaching. When you get to the CSU, the state college level, the professors, it's more balanced. Like teaching is more of their job, and some have research on the side. So it's probably harder to find professors to do research with, but more of them are there to teach. And then obviously at the community college level, that's why we're there. So there are differences in sometimes, like you said, Nobel Prize, immediately I went, ooh, that's not likely to be somebody that's good at dumbing things down to undergrads, right? They're going to be up here in their cloud and their level. Why doesn't everybody understand this? And sometimes it's really hard for them to teach because they just have never had to do the elevator pitch. Like I ask students to be like, okay, you just learned all about cellular respiration. Give me a 5-minute elevator pitch to somebody that doesn't know what it is. Explain it in your own words in less than 5 minutes. And that's a really good skill, but a lot of really smart people can't do it.
All right.
All right.
So our next question is going to be, so someone's struggling kind of how to get the most important information from like a PowerPoint or a lecture. I guess what would be some tips for someone to kind of gather the most important information from, I guess, a lecture and how they can apply it into their studying?
So again, if you have some way to preview what's going to be in the lecture, if it's based in the book and there's an outline in the book, if you're given any kind of study questions or quizzes or material like that you can reference, and that way you're sort of on the hunt for, it seems like the main topics were, the structure of the organelle, the function of the organelle, and the, possible diseases caused when this organelle malfunctions. Those are our headings, and then put what's coming in lecture under them. And then what you got to sort of look at lecture and be like, is this just a funny story that they were telling to keep us awake? Or was this important information that I should be writing down? Okay. Most likely the important information hopefully will be more obvious. And, you can always be that person. Is this going to be on the test? or, more politely, maybe after class, go up to the professor and said, you talked for quite a while about the peroxisome, but I don't remember seeing much about it in the book. Is that something that I should focus on when I'm studying? Not like, were you just telling us stories to keep us awake, but, ask them, I'm trying to prioritize my studying. What would you say are the 3 main topics? And I wouldn't be afraid to message them and ask them that, or to ask about things that seem like a little out there. Did that help?
Yeah, the other thing I would also add is decoding. If it's in the syllabus and if it's in the PowerPoint and the professor's spending 20 minutes talking about it, it's going to be on. It's important just because they've allotted that time, and also you have to decipher. Teachers are humans, professors are humans, and they've got their favorite thing, where they may have spent like 5 years doing research, or and so they're going to ask you because they think it's important, and your job is to kind of play a mind game with your professor to understand what they think it's important and what you need to do well on the class. If you're spending 2 labs time going over a topic, I would guarantee you it's going to be on some lab test and it's going to be on some lecture question. So that's just going to be the thing they're going to ask you. Or if they're giving homework on it. Like if you're taking a physics class and you've done 10 problems on mechanics, uh, you know, of I don't know, like the meta I don't know, meta-analysis, it's going to be on the exam. So this just it's just a really important thing that
Can I add an insider tip?
go for it.
Find out if most of your professors, I'm assuming, have graduate degrees. ask them or find out what they studied. Because you know that that's going to be, if it's at all relevant to your class, anywhere, they're going to bring it in because it's their baby, it's what they learned, it's what they studied. So for me, I warned my Bio 2 students. I said, now I could talk for 3 hours on protein targeting because that's what I did. And I could talk about yeast cells for another hour. I'm not going to, but you know that I'm going to ask you something about it. You know, you're not going to get away without any protein targeting questions on the test because that's my area of expertise, right? So always, and you know, if you're trying to distract them and kill time in class, ask them about it. Usually you're good for 10 minutes. So somebody asked here about covering dual coding a little more. And I just so happen to have my slides queued up for the course I teach. So I'm going to share those real quick. I think I am. Okay. So dual coding is working with figures and converting the figures into words. So for example, you have a diagram that you're given in your textbook or a handout that has a figure. My advice is explain it to somebody that can't see it. Okay, if I've got a blind student and I have to make a text description of that figure for them, how would I explain it? Okay, this is a diagram of the circulatory system and it's showing you know, the heart here and the veins here and the connections here. And how would you go about explaining that figure to somebody using your words? Okay. And then taking a paragraph and doing the opposite. So you have a paragraph of text that's explaining you to things. How would you convert that into a study aid? And so let's see, where is that slide? Sorry if this makes you dizzy. I'll try not to do it too fast here. So my example here was you're given a paragraph of text on comparing plant and animal cells. And it's, to me, this is just like blah, 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 blah. It doesn't help me. So how could I make it into a visual that's helpful? A comparison table, okay? A Venn diagram, an infographic if I want to make it fancy and kill some time playing in Canva or something, you know. But trying to create these visuals when you're given text and then doing the reverse, taking a table or something that you're given and explaining it in words, just really helps cement the material in your brain by taking it from something you see to something you write and then going the reverse way. Okay.
Any last questions? Anybody? Please feel free to put them in the Q&A.
Yeah, if no questions, we'll let our speaker go because I'm sure she has other things to do today.
I have to record a lecture on dual coding and other study techniques, so I'm all primed and ready to go.
What
good, Hannah. I'm glad.
What URL are you looking for? I don't know which.
So there's a Google Drive that has some files and planning sheets in it that I talked about. So this was the source for other worksheets from Oregon State. And then there was the 6 effective study methods were covered by the learning scientists. And then the video replay will be available at the YouTube channel here in the little box. It says YouTube PreMedCC. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And
yeah, so no questions. So
okay.
yes, and the slides are in the Google Drive. So
yeah.
And we'll keep this open for a few minutes so you could download any of the links that you want before we close it. But once we close it, we don't have access to the links, so to the chat. So please download anything that you need from the chat. Well, it was really great seeing you. Glad that you're doing well, and please have fun next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
Well, I wish you happy studying and good luck establishing good study habits.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You're welcome.
Good day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.